The film slid through the projector's innards. It caught the booth's dim light so that reflected squares and flecks of radiance blurred over Ellen's arm and the front of her blouse. She could barely hear what Mr. Schreier was saying, but she heard the applause as he finished, which grew to a roar as Silas Graham came out from the wings, moving with sprightly vigor. He waved to the audience. "Some of you already know me," he said, his low, rasping voice filling the theater effortlessly as the crowd fell silent. "You know the places I've been, the things I've seen, the things I've done. Satan's followers are real, my friends, and they're among us, closer than we'd like to think." "Amen," someone called from the audience. "Pornographers," said Graham, drawing out the word like he was sucking venom from a snake bite. His wild eyes darted from face to face. Behind him, the red velvet curtains parted with a groan of unoiled chain in motion, revealing the screen. "Pimps and pushers, bloodthirsty acolytes of sin, eager to share their perverse appetites with a public all too easy to lead from Christ's light and into the wilderness. You think they aren't out there, preying on our children, our women? You think their tentacles aren't wrapped around everything we hold sacred, squeezing the life out of the Western world?" Ellen's palm itched fiercely. She scratched at it through her bandages as the film continued to wind itself into place. Graham clapped his hands together, the sound echoing in the rapt stillness. "What you're going to see tonight is the recorded work of a circle of degenerate Jewish performers from the end of the Weimar Republic. Transvestites, prostitutes, common criminals, and alchemists communing with demonic powers, all festering in the heart of that decadent Sodom. For 40 years, the film was lost. Now recovered from the lair of a twisted deviant, we present it to you here as a warning and as a reminder of the adversary's power and cunning." Ellen threw the projector switch, its little motor whirred to life. White light bathing Graham, he spread his arms, the gaunt lines of his face etched deep by shadow. "The Path Foundation presents, for your edification, Carla Bartok's The Baroness." The opening credits warped and shifted over Graham as he paced the stage. Bartok was a cabaret performer who dabbled in film. He was known to dress in women's clothes and to frequent Berlin's gay bars, dens of sin that would make the whore Babylon herself blush red. The stair in the side of the hill, Hadot looming against a storm-racked sky, Ilya climbing up into its shadow. The audience gasped. The shot was so clear, so vast, that for a moment even Ellen paused. Her fingers caught in her throat. With shaking fingers, she unwrapped her bandaged arm as Graham ranted and raved about the protocols of the elders of Zion. The stained and discolored gauze fell away, revealing an ulcerated flesh and patches of translucent flaking skin. Filth drooled from her infected palm. The film emerged from its oozing wound like a snake leaving its burrow. It lashed about, smearing the projector with blood and pus and other discharge, and coiled tight around the threaded copy. Ellen screamed as it dragged her fingers into the projector's workings, small bones breaking, skin torn away in ragged strips. People turned in their seats at the sound. Graham fell silent. The image on the screen split and wavered, an inverted echo of Ilya and the castle burning over it. Ellen let out a protracted groan. She sagged against the speckled glass of the booth of the film as it came out of her. It felt like shitting, her whole body stretching around the excretion, muscles convulsing, forcing it out of her. The sharp edges tore her palm, her thumb flopped loose, her fingers seized, crushed between the cams. The pain went on, huge and impossible, splitting her with its relentless force. The doubled picture curled in on itself, the edges of the cells burning and warping, holes opening like wounds in the print. The screen was random noise. Ellen screamed again, her glasses sliding from her nose, the world blurring as blood poured from her ruined hand. She could see something yellow-white glistening in all the gore. People were shouting down below, the score cut out. Graham stood flummoxed on the stage, looking up at the scribbled artifacts and scratches reeling across the screen. And then from the darkness, her face emerged. The Baroness. That was a long intro, but I wanted to read all of that just to like get to set the scene. Let's fucking go.
Folks, if you're skeptical, in 2 pages on from that, Strom Thurmond is mercilessly hacked to death by a demon, so this is the good timeline.
What do we know? What does mean? How are the union and the socialist be? Everything I can need, oh I need, oh I need, oh I need, oh what does mean? Oh what does mean? Oh what does mean? Oh what does mean? Oh,
Welcome back to Workers Lit, your favorite podcast about fighting for the narrative. Jacob and Lenore here today. Aisha is off on a mission that may or may not have to do with restoring an ancient film of great arcane power to deal out justice to all of our enemies. But we have somebody else in the third mic today. We have Jon from Horror Vanguard. He's the author of Capitalism, a horror story, and he writes at the Haunt blog. You know him as the Lit Crit guy on social media. Jon, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. Super excited to be here.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming on.
Oh yeah. And we talked a little bit about what book we would talk about. You know your business about gothic horror and whatnot. And this was one of your suggestions. And you've written about this book before. So tell me, what was it about this book that spoke to you, made you write about it the first time and want to talk about it today?
Yeah, thank you so much. So I always try and keep track of what I'm reading during the course of the year. And right at the start of the year, I read two really great books. Ironically, that are like completely unrelated, but are basically about the same thing. They're about film during Nazi Germany and what film means and what it does and what it stands in for and how we relate to film. So I wrote about this book by the incredible Gretchen Felker-Martin, and I also wrote about Daniel Kahneman's book, The Director, which is about G.W. Pabst, or, as he was known in the 20s and 30s, Red Pabst, for making films about the lives of working class women and sex workers. Um, Worked with Greta Garbo, and Pabst was one of these filmmakers who fled Nazi Germany and ended up going back. And so Kalman's book is all about the reasons why. It's very dark. It's very funny. It's all about the ways in which during times of fascism, people go, the solution is art, right? Art will save us. At least we'll get some good punk music out of it. And then this book is really good on like all of the horrible compromises that go into making any kind of art, and all of the ways that it won't save you. And in fact, it will help you, like it will smooth over all of the little things that you tell yourself to help you sleep at night. And then you have Gretchen's book, which is this just kind of blistering sicko modes. It's one for the sickos. It's one, or as we call them, the listeners of Horror Vanguard podcast, um, which is about like the libidinal economics of spectatorship specifically. I think, right. There's a question this book asks again and again, which is like, do you want it? Like and really the question for anyone who loves movies is like, what do you want? What do you want from this experience with art? So yeah, I wrote about that. And yeah, hopefully we'll have a great conversation, because I think this book is so interesting for so many different reasons.
Well, before we get more into the book, and I know Lenore has a bio on the author who is phenomenal, could you tell us a little more about what you do? Because we love to do our plugs at the top. So all of y'all, listen.
Thank you. Let me plug. First thing I have to plug is Horror Vanguard. Horror Vanguard is our podcast. It's on horror movies and radical politics and theory. We like to joke it's about the three most important things in life, which is one, the power of friendship, two, the inevitable victory of communism over capitalism, and three, if we have time, we talk about scary movies. The last big thing that we released was a 26-hour episode covering all of the Amityville horror movies,
Wow.
um, which was by far just the wildest thing we've ever done. But yeah, we've done almost 400 episodes now of horror movies, of radical politics, philosophy, and theory. So yeah, if you love the power of friendship, if you love communism, and if you really like scary movies, please listen to Horror Vanguard. And yeah,
And
I'm also a writer.
you've had guests on there that people that like our show would like. Brett O'Shea has been on there. Josh Borman has been on
Yeah,
there. Probably
yeah.
others. If I had to guess, that we've had mutual guests. So, folks, if you want to know where to start, go check out those episodes. We'll link some in the episode description.
Yeah, all I'll say is like in the Venn diagram of like if you listen to Work as Lit, then there's a pretty good chance that I think you'll enjoy what we do as well. And so we
Definitely.
would love to say hi. So please do check it out.
Brilliant.
Oh yeah.
What do you
Well,
say about
yeah.
what do you say about the sort of surge of art that arises in the when we're on the cusp of when a society is on the cusp of fascism? Is it rings remarkably true to me, certainly, and in particular jives with something interesting I found about Gretchen Felker-Martin in my research for the bio. She believes, I believe this was in her article for Time, where she writes about like why people seek out weird shit, right? She believes that just as we have a sex drive, right, a libido, right, we have a death drive that causes us to seek out like vicarious experiences of like violence and terror, right? The better to affirm our sense of safety, A, and B, contextualize the suffering that we see in our world.
Mhm.
And that's what I like about this book is because what if there wasn't that dividing line eventually, but also what if the horror was the only thing that could save us? No, I'm super excited to discuss this and to discuss her. This is actually my first Gretchen Felker-Martin book that I've ever read. I know about Manhunt. It's been on my TBR for a while, and it just like rocketed to the top.
Well,
Um,
I was gonna say this book takes the "we'll make no apologies for the terrors" from Marx like very literal. It's uh conjuring. I mean, I read a little bit of it at the top, and we'll talk about it more. But just conjuring horrors, visual horrors that far surpass anything that the enemy can put forward, but also understanding that that spectacle of visual horror is nothing compared to the actual horrors
mhm,
of the things they're destroying. There is nothing so wretched in that room as Strom Thurmond and that
Mhm.
preacher who's like sort of a mix of like Billy Graham and some other people and some other stuff like that. There is no horror such as that, which we'll get into it. So it's also a fun subversion in that way.
mhm.
Uh, as I think horror fans love. We love to root for a monster.
This is such a fun book to read in conjunction with. Jacob. I've finally gotten around to reading Tollivan's Wild Faith, right? And like our preacher character is ripped right out of his book.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
I mean, it is a mix of he's a mix of Billy Graham and Silas Malafia. So I mean, it's just right there.
Yeah, and there's other certain analogs that we'll get into, certainly. But Gretchen Felker-Martin herself, she is from New Hampshire. She was born there in about the mid '80s, and moved to Worcester, Massachusetts in 2007. Details on her early life are kind of thin, because it's going to be a more like interview heavy kind of bio, because I found her opinions on horror and queerness much more interesting. Um, so her genre of choice, right out the gate, is horror. Right? She says from a very young age, right, she had loved reading horror, inflicting disgust and discomfort on herself, in sort of a controlled fashion. Right? She would ask her dad to reread scary scenes from bedtime stories. Basically, like she sought extremity in media from a very young age. Mostly horror, but in general, like just the craziest media she could find. Right?
I
And
was
from
Lenore. I was the other day over at a family friend's house,
Mhm.
and the kid was just watching the scene where Anakin gets his legs chopped off and burned in Episode 3 of Star Wars, and just rewinding it over and over.
oh, it's
I
so
had
good.
to share, just being like, check this out, and just playing it again and again. And I'm sorry, that just immediately came to mind when you said that.
No, yeah, I love. Every so often I'll go through a deeply depressive phase where like I'm just watching like clips from Apocalypse Media again and again, like that horrible CGI shit from The Core with like Rome exploding in a lightning storm, that
Oh
sort of
yeah.
thing.
Just the
So,
scene from the Alex Garland Civil War movie where Washington D.C. gets blown up, but like putting Benny Hill music over it.
mhm. Well, one advantage that one advantage that immersing yourself in this sort of thing gives you is that for Gretchen Felker-Martin specifically, she says writing horror has taught her that, okay, like feeling disgust or fear is morally quite meaningless, right? We
Mm.
recoil from things because it's advantageous to like avoid rotten food, to avoid disease, but like that sort of fear is, you know, no way to run a world, no way to go through life, and it's very easily transmuted to fascism, right? So she's learned not to take her own fears or anxieties all too that seriously. So from the age of 15, she decides she wants to write and make some of this stuff herself. And she starts publishing actually around about my age in 2017 with her first novella, No End Will Be Found. She's self-published 3 novellas and 1 novel, Ego Homini Lupus. That started life on her Patreon, which she started in 2018, and it's for her written works and also her film screenings, right? She hosts the Deadlights Theater, which is this film curation sort of thing where she screens movies to her Discord, engages in moderated discussion, and thereafter, great fun.
John, have you read any of her other books?
Yeah. So I actually, probably full disclosure. So I've written about Manhunt quite a lot in Capitalism Horror Story. Gretchen was kind enough to blurb that book as well. So I do have a little bit of a kind of investment. But no, I've followed Gretchen's work for a long time, and the traditionally published novels, I've read Manhunt and this one, and I've read quite a lot of her self-published work and other writings online as well.
Fantastic. Yeah. It doesn't matter if you're not. We hate objectivity on this podcast. We love subjectivity.
Sorry.
Like you like her because she blurbed your book because your book is cool, and like thus she's cool. There's nothing wrong with that.
because she's based and correct. Like
yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Because we like to hang out with good people. There you go.
Yeah, nothing wrong with being upfront about that, certainly. But her Patreon really starts. That's when she really starts taking off and branching out into other things. From 2018 to 2022, roughly, she had film and TV criticism published in various outlets, Polygon, later Time. A lot of writing about Game of Thrones. She's I don't know that I'd call her like a defender of how the series ended, but of the cultural phenomenon like overall, certainly.
Mm-hmm.
She says it's the last show that everybody watched together.
That's a great article or great essay that she wrote. It's an all-timer.
Mm-hmm. Her book Manhunt. Now, this was published by Tor's Nightfire imprint in 2022. Tor's more weird horror, like weird fiction sort of imprint. Rousing success. Vulture named it the best book of the year. For our listeners, it's set in a post-apocalypse where those with too much testosterone have all turned into cannibalistic rapist monsters. This includes basically all cisgender men. The only surviving humans are cis women and some transgender and non-binary people. And what's funny, what was funny to me is that in an interview with the Creative Independent, she describes this as her compromise book, right? Her first real commercial work.
That's so sick.
Yeah, she describes, and this is her words, not mine, she describes everything that she'd written prior to that as inaccessible, miserable, putrid, and maximalist. But to hear her tell it, right, and I'll pull a quote from the interview here, I'm not made of stone. I've made decisions for money before. 3 years before I published Manhunt, I was a survival sex worker lying awake at night, every night, panicking about where I was going to come up with rent. I was stealing from supermarkets to eat. I'm not going to get all pressed about whether or not I'm making an edit because it'll make the book more palatable. My stuff is already way out on the edge, and I'm very happy with that. I'll make a few compromises. That's on my to read list. It's about the fear of being forcibly detransitioned. It's about the tension between groups of trans women, those who can assimilate and those who can't as easily. But also, I was very interested to discover that she kills off J.K. Rowling in this book. Did you know that, Jacob?
No, I did not know that. That's sick.
It's so cool. I love her.
Yeah, it got review bombed by fascist adult children on Amazon and Goodreads over that sort of thing. Lily Wachowski is adapting Manhunt into a TV series, apparently.
Okay.
Last we heard about that was like a year and a half or so ago, but I'm very interested to see where that goes.
All right.
Cuckoo was released in 2024. That was a Lambda finalist about a conversion therapy camp. I have a friend.
Goes hard. That's a Cuckoo Goes Hard. That's a great one.
I have a friend who says it made her physically ill like 4 chapters in, so
Yeah,
I'm very much looking forward to reading that.
yeah, full like body shakes at moments. I gotta
Mm,
say, for me.
God, I can only imagine. From 2023 to 2025, she wrote intermittently for DC Comics, a few short stories for Harley Quinn, for Poison Ivy, one for Titans, one for DC Pride 2024. In June 2025, we may recall, she was announced as the writer of a Red Hood series for DC Comics. On the 10th of September, DC announced, one day after the series debuted, that they were canceling it and refunding retailers for every issue they'd purchased. This is because Felker-Martin, as an upstanding human being whose example we should all follow, publicly celebrated the death of a Nazi, one Charlie Kirk. Said Felker-Martin following his assassination, thoughts and prayers, you Nazi bitch, and hope the bullet's okay after touching Charlie Kirk.
Oh God. Yeah, it's a Red Hood comic. Like, if you know anything about Red Hood, that he's probably the one who actually killed Charlie Kirk. Oh God.
No,
That's crazy.
yeah, this really I'm curious how did the because you're across the pond obviously, John. How did the whole Charlie Kirk thing sort of hit you?
Uh, it didn't. Well, it did only in as much as like all internet culture is essentially a response to American political culture nowadays.
Mm-hmm,
Mhm.
Um,
mm-hmm.
so like Charlie Kirk is there is a Turning Points UK, but
Is there
Really?
really?
they're the biggest. Well, they were the biggest bunch of like dweeb losers you can imagine. Like young conservatives are just like inherently funny,
Right.
and they've increasingly kind of turned into like a deeply fringe Christian nationalist sect. Charlie Kirk is forever immortalized as the subject of a million AI memes, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Which is the legacy that he deserves, right? That's the legacy that he deserves.
I mean, yesterday at time of recording, JD Vance and Erica Kirk came to Athens, Georgia to do a big TPUSA event at UGA. They've been hyping it up for years, or not years, but months for the University of Georgia. And they could not even fill they couldn't even fill a basketball court for the vice
Yeah.
president of the United States of chairs. And Erica ended up not showing because the comments were too mean ahead of time. It's awful.
L, just hold this L, like,
And JD Vance ended up getting booed by multiple of the Christians there because he says the Pope doesn't know anything about theology. It's so sick. People were talking about like there were more people at the protest outside the event than there were at the event, which is truly just lovely to
yeah,
see. So
great, great.
hopefully we can call TPUSA an increasingly isolated sect of dweebs here pretty soon too.
I
Yeah,
love that we're back to like heads of state beefing with the Pope in this day and age.
It's very
After like hundreds of years of that, well, I say hundreds of years of that not happening. Like there was the whole stuff with fascist Italy. Um, I don't know. It would be so fucking funny if there were like an investiture crisis in like the modern day United States, where just the president asserted the right to pick bishops instead.
yeah,
there's
yeah. I
Trump would be
can't
the
wait
one.
until I can't wait until America reinvents the Reformation from first principles. It's gonna be great. Also can't wait until JD Vance gets excommunicated. That's gonna be so good.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
God.
No, I just God, there's so much cool stuff going.
I
There's
mean, you'd
war in
think you'd get
Persia.
excommunicated for killing the previous pope.
That's true. We I mean I was in Rome just a couple weeks after Francis died, and I saw a very big graffiti that said JD Vance killed Francis. So it's reached over there too.
But yeah, the whole DC thing is just like it's the sort of thing that I wish more people got about how capitalism and patriarchy are intertwined in ways that are not necessarily like immediately advantageous to profit, right? Like because decisions like this, like you will find that there is a blank check for enforcing ideological reproduction, right? You can
Mhm.
in fact sacrifice if you're making decisions at a company like this, you can in fact sacrifice profit in the name of making an example of somebody who was never meant to share in it. Gretchen Felker-Martin, of course, is herself trans, and like, you know, surprising number of incidents of companies being faced with the opportunity to either have another revenue stream or to publicly crucify a trans person and picking the latter, you know?
Mhm.
But nevertheless, she continues in her career. Her Patreon's doing fine. Black Flame is the new most recent book we've done, I think. It dropped on the 5th of August, 2025. USA Today bestseller. It won the Trans Feminine Review Reader's Choice Award for Outstanding Horror, and outstanding it certainly is. Like, had it not been for, I think I read it in like 2 days. Had it not been for work, it would have been one.
Yeah. Sorry to Augustina Basterica. Your record that you set has been immediately broken like 3 weeks later. So sorry about that. Back to a more recent book.
I mean, if Agostina Basterica and Gretchen Felker-Martin just start like racing to release new stuff, that'll be the best possible timeline.
There could be worse worlds.
I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at that. That sounds great.
Yes.
I mean, I will say that on a like, if I put on my critic hat for a second, I don't necessarily think this is Gretchen's best book.
Mhm.
I think there are things that maybe, having read Manhunt, that don't hit quite as hard for me personally.
Sure.
But I think Gretchen's one of the most exciting writers in contemporary horror fiction by some distance. And what's been great is to see how Gretchen's success has really opened the door for a lot of other trans writers as well.
Mhm.
And like, has been a real, there's this kind of like great thriving community of like very extreme, quite politically radical, trans focused horror that's come out over the past 2 or 3 years. And I think Gretchen's played a really important part in that. I don't think that should be downplayed. I think personally she would say she's just writing her books, and that's, but like, through her work and like a long time of fucking hard graft has really paid off, and like we're all benefiting from that.
Mhm.
Wait, radical politics, trans horror. You're just spoiling next week's guest. It's Lee Mandello, folks. It's gonna be a great episode. But yeah, exactly right.
Lee Mandello, he was one of the people who reviewed Manhunt. Actually, I was very
Yes.
intrigued to read his take on it.
Yeah, he's also a fan for sure.
Mhm.
Anything else on the bio, Lenore?
Well, I was interested to, what particularly interested me is the maturity with which she approaches writing from the experience of, you know, the frequently cosmic in scale sort of horror that comes from, you know, moving through patriarchy as a queer person, right? Because she speaks, and this comes up in particular in Manhunt, the way she depicts like some of the TERFs, right, and how those people's worldview ultimately comes from, people who were perhaps you know, oppressed under patriarchy, but nevertheless turned it into, like, you know, flip the script and themselves started oppressing trans women, right? You know, she speaks.
You're Christina Hoff Sommers of the world.
Precisely. You know, and she speaks. Gretchen Felker-Martin does. She speaks extensively and intelligently in her interviews on like the insanity that can be engendered by a worldview in which you conceive of yourself as a perpetual victim, right? And like, this is not in any kind of like anti-woke context. This is about like people and intentional communities of people who have experienced oppression, excusing cruelty and violence and behavior that they themselves would never tolerate from the outgroup. There's a lot of that in Manhunt, I'm given to understand, so that makes me really intrigued to check it out, because it is certainly easy to fall back into, okay, like I just need to, you know, slaughter everything that you know, around me that doesn't directly benefit me.
Who was it that we were talking about the other day? The first woman ever that ever sat in Congress, Lenore?
Jeanette Rankin.
Yeah, Jeanette Rankin, who, you know, obviously supported certain women's rights, and then also said,
"Oh no, no, I'm wrong. Sorry. Jeanette Rankin was the first woman in the House of Representatives. Rebecca Latimer Felton was the first woman senator.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Her, who, you know, in some capacity was a trailblazer for women and supported women's rights and understood women's oppression, and said, because of women's oppression and because we experience sexual assaults, I'm fine with 1,000 lynchings a day. So, like, you know, that is a type of person that can only apply to, you know, your group and what attacks you. And of course, for her, she also just meant white women.
Mhm.
That's
This
a
this
that's
this
a
this is a
relevant.
person who has a mural still up on the wall of Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. It is
Yeah,
grotesque.
has a quote up that like if you go like 2 sentences down in the actual speech, she's like, and that doesn't apply to black people. Like literally, it's
Yeah, yeah,
crazy,
yeah.
and it's right
Mhm,
next to the African art exhibit. I fucking hate this city.
mhm, mhm.
I love it, but I hate it.
Mhm. But yeah, but that's what I like about the exploitation film in this book, though, and we'll get into the content of it now. Um, the book's about a you know, and right up at the top, I will say our protagonist is working through a lot of gender stuff, a lot of deep-seated gender stuff in this book. Um, refers to herself, using she and her pronouns.
Until yeah,
Yeah, that shifts, of course. But yeah, so the narrative moves at the speed of our protagonist's, self-conception, and so in our discussion shall we. Um,
yes. Well, we will be calling Ellen Ellen for most of the book and using she for
Yeah.
most of the book up until the point that is no longer the case to match the book itself, as I think the
yes,
way that this makes sense.
yes,
And
I
let's
agree,
introduce
Sheila.
Ellen. Ellen Kramer. She is our protagonist here, our point of view character. She is a deeply closeted Jewish woman, or so she thinks, woman, who has been raised by the like. It's a family that aren't wasps, but they want to be wasps really bad. That
Mhm.
live in New York City. It's a Jewish family that like said, "Oh, your brother had a rebellious phase when he tried to like hang out with other Jewish people and like go to like Jewish restaurants and stuff like that." Like they hate they hate their like own culture in a very deep way. They want to be Christianized. They want to be country club. They
Mhm.
don't do that. The only thing you're not supposed to criticize is Israel, which is a very particular choice that they make um, here. And it's this family that she has been raised with that has given her everything and that has oppressed her in very particular ways, both as a woman and as a queer person who we put her through some kind of conversion therapy at some point when they found out that she was in a relationship with another woman. And she's really had the sort of radical politics beaten out of her, had the artistry beaten out of her in most of the case. And she's now working at this job where she repairs films, like old films, does restoration directly on them. And they, even though they helped her get that job, are not even happy that she's doing that. They want her to get married and settle down now that she's the ancient age of 33. And that's the deal with her. She is a deeply nervous, nerdy woman with very low self-esteem who is flinching at every noise and is really the only thing she enjoys in life. That she lets herself enjoy in life is her work on whatever films.
Mhm.
Um, is that a fair description, y'all think, of Ellen Kramer there?
100, yeah, to 100%. Like, and indeed, like, um, a frequent topic on this show is that there should be more like flawed and like messed up queer characters, that we can be just as messy as like any cis, any straight character. That's what those are the stories that Gretchen Felker-Martin's interested in telling. And certainly that's our first impression of Ellen here. I'm seeing on page 5. The specific paragraph about which I have the note, ah ha 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 ha, homegirl is a toxic repressor. Uh, Mr. Schreer pursed his lips. Ellen glanced at the Institute projectionist, respooling the reel. She didn't want to work on this. The Baroness was ugly, disturbing. Men in drag performing bizarre occult rituals, beasts and devils of papier-mâché and rubber cavorting on sound stages made to resemble wooded glades, lascivious bodies grinding and touching, needles pulling skin. They needed the money, would probably have to shutter the whole foundation without it. But she found herself staring hard at Mr. Schreer, hoping that he'd turn it down. Right? And like so you're immediately confronted with, I mean, first of all, like, The Baroness is an exploitation film, yes.
Mhm.
But also, like, as is not hard to parse, the sort of debauchery and gore and smut in it is just how quote unquote polite society sees queer desire and queer sexuality no matter what you do, right? So like to have her looking in on this and to sit with her initial revulsion is, it's very easy to laugh at her at first, but yeah, as it turns out, she's had this beaten into her.
Yes, and just so folks know, the foundation she works at has been hired to restore this film. The film is called The Baroness. We will be talking about it extensively, and it was made by a Jewish director named Bartok during the last years of the Weimar Republic, or actually even later than that, in the early years of Nazi Germany. He was, along with everyone else involved with the film, killed. Some of them for being Jewish, some of them for being queer, some of them for both. In his case, both. They died in concentration camps or trying to escape Nazi Germany. This film only survived because an Ernst Röhm type, a queer Nazi that survived the war, hid it away along with other contraband. And they are now restoring it, partially for the money and partially because their foundation has taken some heat because they've been like restoring like Klan films and shit like that.
Yeah, like a Birth of the Nation stand-in.
Yes.
They did a restoration job on. I wanted to pick up on something Lenore said. Like the fact that Ellen is deeply unlikable, and I think this is
Yeah.
something that Gretchen's writing is really good at, which is a kind of indirect and sometimes very direct critique of like a moralistic kind of cultural production where you go, oh well, what matters is like represent, like we have to be like we as the quick we need to be represented and everything has to be like good and morally appropriate. And actually
Hmm.
culture is also a side of politics, right? It doesn't matter if you're not a nice person. I'm sorry. What matters is like, are there political struggles at play that are areas of contestation, right? Like, it doesn't matter that representation is imperfect or that like we have someone who is like because Ellen is such an interesting character because like that imposed self-loathing has kind of like
Yes.
concentrated to the point of being so like gravitationally dense. Like her great problem up until the very end of the novel is like literally she can't get out of herself, right? Like isn't that the worst thing sometimes of just being stuck with the person that you are? And it takes so much bravery and courage and like willingness to kind of go through something that could be horrifying to recognize that the person that you are is not the person that you might be in the future, because that's beautiful and incredible, right? That's but it's also really fucking scary to be like, are you willing to uh kind of like give up this conception of self? For a lot of people the answer is no. So Ellen, right at the beginning, is has made that choice, or seems to have made has had that choice made for her. It's like so. Gretchen's work is often seen as like being very gory and kind of full of body horror, and it is. But I think some of the best stuff about this book is like the psychological interiority of like being stuck with someone who has not only been told to hate themselves, but has internalized that to such a degree as it's become sort of like self annihilation.
Yeah.
Um, but that's also paradoxically that's also the moment at which you go, there's an escape vector here, right? If the self is annihilated, that opens the space for something else, right? For something something we say on Horror Vanguard all the time is horror wants to do things to your body. And the thing is, some of that stuff you might be into, and you may not have known you were into that. And it might be scary, it might even hurt, but it might also be kind of hot, right? It might also be kind of like exciting, and it might allow you to become a different kind of person. Like that question of difference, that's not a moral question; it's a political question, right? What's the politics of? And so like I think you're so right to bring up the fact that she's not very likable.
Yeah.
She's hideously repressed. She's incredibly rude. She's like, but these are not moral failings. These are
No.
symptoms of a political system that has produced this kind of subjectivity. And I think that's a really important thing to flag right at the top, right? That when
Absolutely.
like I'm so glad you both brought this up of like this idea of like the moralism that gets baked into a lot of cultural production, because that's not the kind of territory that we're dealing with here, right?
And it's worth noting, we see the life her parents are trying to build for her almost immediately because we are introduced to Philip. We are introduced to Philip. we are introduced to Jesse, this shitty forced boyfriend that her
Oh
parents were like,
God.
"You played
Blech.
with this guy when you were a kid," and she's like, "Did I? All right, whatever." And he's like, "I love you," immediately, and is
Blech.
like, um, at first, cajoling her into sex, and she's not having a good time, and eventually
Hmm.
just straight up raping her without any pretext at all and
Oh
hurting
yeah.
her. Though from the beginning she's not into it. I mean, you have this horrible scene right at like the first time they meet where they have sex. She has not a good time, and he's like, "Did you come?" And she's like, "Yeah, sure, 100%,
Yeah.
man." Thumbs up
God.
emoji. Like just a real miserable guy that is this insecure, kind of whiny, constantly like needling her. And her parents are like, "This guy's perfect. Look, he checks off the marks. He works at the mayor's office. He's a vice deputy in the Andrew Cuomo administration for governor
Hmm.
or whatever. Like that's the type of guy this is. He works for Eric Adams, right? Like we love this
Mhm.
guy.
Hmm.
And she is just, I mean, obviously miserable with him, but also can't tear herself away without deeply disappointing her parents, especially her mother, who is just so intense and sharp and gets described as like a piece of furniture. Like she's turned her body into all angles and just something for display. And her mother is also constantly needling her and her siblings, who show up rarely but are in the book, about their bodies, especially constantly talking
Mm.
about your weight. You need to look at your weight. She has references to, we like were on Weight Watchers as a kid. You off paid, out of room. Hear her yelling at her second trimester pregnant daughter that she looks fat. Um, that's the kind of like body image stuff too. So there is the body horror of what is to come, right? The stuff that will literally come out of the screen and the eldritchness of it. But there is also the body horror of like not feeling comfortable in your own flesh, both on a queer level, but also on the level of like you have been told not to eat and have this horrible relationship to food, to the extent that like when she sees women, not even overweight women, yet though also overweight women, she is like turned on by like, that's so taboo. That's so like, that's the
Hmm.
type of, and there's so much interior, like she's just so torn up by all this shit she's gone through. It's like thing after thing. And all of it is very real. I mean, these are types of people that we've all met, unfortunately. It's like,
Yeah.
this upper class, like, lower level bourgeois horror, basically.
Her immediate tendency to, I we'll get into Jesse. I have like lots of thoughts about Jesse, but like what you say about her immediate tendency to eroticize the things that she's taught to hate, the things that are inaccessible to her, right? Whether it's the film critic Rachel Feldman being particularly fat, whether it's going to see The Thing and like it's a gory body horror film, right? There is a desire for to be other than she is. There's a desire to bodily change, and that she expresses on several occasions herself interior without really embracing it at first. And it's so easy to jump to eroticizing that if you're in her position, because you're taught to view it as taboo. You're taught to view it as vulgar and lesser, and as indulging some part of yourself best repressed.
Mm.
Mm.
Well, the plot moves forward because she starts working on the film, fixing it, and she quickly figures out, okay, the negative is a different movie than the version they showed. It's also more usable. One of the images of Black Flame we get is very early on, because she is working with a negative, right, and seeing the inverse color and the candlelight and things like that are Black Flame. Though there will be more Black Flame later on. And we also see the dynamic in her office is just like she's working with like some shitty guy whose dad's on the board named Philip, who sucks. Her boss sucks, always making, kind of offhanded anti-Semitic comments. Just everything about the place just seems not particularly fun. They're like, yeah, somebody at this job like died not that long ago while working on a Chip and Dale cartoon.
Hmm.
It's a bad time because of breathing in the fumes. It's a bad time, but it is the only thing she likes, that and like going to the
Yes.
movies. And then she has an experience of the movies that really rocks her world, because she overhears two people hooking up in the bathroom, and it changes her life.
Many other
Who
faces.
amongst us? Who amongst us has not had a life-changing experience at the cinema? Because sometimes it's watching a movie, and sometimes it's having something awakened within you, and sometimes those two things are the same thing.
Yes. Well, and to read specific, and I'll read specifically because it repeats over and over this dialogue. It is she hears two women in the bathroom stall. One says, "I'll make you my dog. You'll sleep at my feet, lick my hand, and come when I call you." And then the other one says, "Please, princess." And then she says, "Do you want it?" She says, "More than anything." Then she hears, "Get on your knees," and a zipper. And like for the rest of the book, you hear this refrain like it's from a poem. The amount of times you hear this throughout it, because she's like, "Oh my God, like they're like playing out my fantasy in there." Now, who are these women that are doing this at like the local AMC? I don't know. Maybe they should get a room, but it has a positive, I think, net positive impact on Ellen's life. Even if it is a little inconsiderate to other people just trying to pee. Um, you know, and she immediately has this like this is like we're immediately like contrasted against the scene we just had with her about to have like having sex, it being this miserable, horrible experience with this man, and then she is gets a million times more out of just this like hearing this audio in this dirty bathroom of these women talking than she could ever get from a fucking thousand Jessies.
The way that Gretchen Felker-Martin writes Ellen's visceral disgust with Jesse, with the way that she writes dissociation, the way that she writes, as we come to find out, dysphoria, right? It's those two things do something very similar to you, particularly like during sex, right? You're suddenly intractably aware of everything that is not your partner, right? And like the way that she's kissing him, and there's like all kinds of like sensations and sounds like in the world that she would rather be focused on, that she unavoidably is trying desperately to transport herself out of this situation, right? Like the way she describes Jesse's need there on page 10 as its entity with its own hunger is so fucking real, right? There's an insurmountable gulf between her pleasure and his. Like it's and like he comes across as like pathetic like early on, but like it's as you find out, right? When he's asking her, "Oh, did you come?" Right, he has an answer in mind already. Like he just has a fundamental disinterest in her pleasure, because patriarchy doesn't teach you to be attracted to women; it teaches you to use us to masturbate. And that's why, as we come to find out, pathetic pieces of shit like Jesse are quite frequently dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And just to pick up on something you were saying earlier about Gretchen's reference to like a death drive. Okay, so there's a long-running joke on HV that I'm never beating the psychoanalyst accusations. Like she's very Freudian. Like this is like so like the entire point of psychoanalysis is not to get you to like change what you want, right? It's not to get you to be like, "Oh, I recognize now that the thing that I wanted was this impossible fantasy that I created." The entire point is to get you to like actually be honest with yourself about the things that you desire.
Yeah.
Right. That's really the entire point. So this question of like, do you want it? Firstly, you have to answer that question, but you also have to have an object in mind. What is the it? Like, what is the object of your desire, right? And this is why film is such an important bit of technology, right? Because, and this is Zizek's old point, and he's a problematic thinker in lots of ways, but like it's broadly true that cinema is the thing that doesn't show you what you want, but it shows you how to want what you want. Right. This is what he means when he says that cinema is the ultimate pervert art, right? You watch film to watch the creation of desire, right? There's always the famous moment in the rom-com where the couple go to the movies, and what do they watch? They don't watch the movie, they watch the other person watching the movie, right? Because that's what desire means, right? So yeah, this moment of complete disassociation, right, where she's unable to admit to herself that Jesse is not only pathetic and revolting, but like the complete opposite of the things that she actually does want. And it doesn't take much. All you have to do is hear something. All you have to do is hear the sound, as the book describes it, the sound of a new leather, or the sound of a zipper, and suddenly you are forced to reckon not with the object of the desire itself, but your relationship to that object.
Yeah.
Right? Are you able to admit to yourself, like, because you can imprison yourself in like these ideas of like the expectation of the external other, right? At one point she says, "How are people supposed to survive without a family?" It's like,
Mhm.
well, maybe your family's shitty. Maybe you don't need them, right? Maybe if with the right help and support and courage, you can be honest about the things that you really want, and the kind of person that you know yourself to be, and everything would necessarily change. So yeah, from anyone who's like read anything on psychoanalysis, you'll kind of like it's such a good book about like how we relate not just to queerness or to kink or to sex, but to cinema itself as like a
Mhm.
technology of the representation of desire. Um, and all of those things are the same kind of like libidinal economy. There's like a kind of vertical slice taken through these things of like those things are not different objects, right? They are all tapping into like the same kind of stuff. Um, yeah, it's so good.
No, like to
Oh,
like
yeah.
you're absolutely right. Like 2 billion%, you're correct. Like because it's it's why we it's why we do what we do as podcasters, right? It's why we yap about this media with other people because it helps bring it enhances our understanding of the thing we're talking about. Certainly, it helps bring our opinions into relief. A, but also B, and more pertinently, like you're absolutely correct. Um there's multiple points throughout this book where Ellen seeks external validation and external sort of pushes to force her from one state of being into another, to force her from repression to acceptance, and certainly whether temporal or supernatural, certainly there's things that help push her in that direction. But ultimately, the decision to embrace what she wants and to reach out and grab it and stab it, as it were, the decision has to be hers.
Mhm.
Well, and we realize the film is indeed supernatural for sure. Not too long. We have an experience where we have an experience. We experience alongside Ellen
We had an
as she
experience.
gets
I
her.
opened up the book and then it started like, diving into my veins, like the pages just like
It
scraping me
sure
from the
did.
inside.
It sure did. It was crazy. Yeah, I had to come feed Shiloh. You were in some kind of trance for a while. It was cool. Um, there's a moment where she cuts her hand really bad on the film canister itself while she's working on it. That seems very unnatural, and she sees herself bleeding on the film, and yet the film doesn't have blood when she looks at it. And when she's looking at the film, it describes it just so y'all can know more about the movie. She's looking at distortions and gaps in the age film gel coating, and then it says the thousand little things that made up the film, in which the slightest error could destroy, obscure, or mar beyond saving. Ellen tried to keep focus on practicalities as much as she could. The film disturbed her. Men and women's clothing, children capering in costumes as imps and gargoyles, dark splashes of blood across pale skin and wetted stone, bodies writhing in elaborate tangles, rubber and leather, iron and broken teeth. And there is a beautiful boy named, the actor is Ilya Kapfelberg, uh, who we'll come to learn more about in a flashback. But Ilya approaches this castle, this grand castle, and is like, "I need to speak to the Baroness, the mistress of the castle." And then the Chamberlain is like, "Come in, but if you're not ready, you're gonna get sexed up." And he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna do it." And he sure does get sexed up by a lot of monsters. There's giantesses. There's a huge woman that's breastfeeding a bunch of children that like pulls him in. There's him being put on the rack, and it all culminates in the director dressed up as the Baroness in women's clothes. Director himself dressed up in women's clothing with a sword, a pendulum sword, kissing Ilya and then cutting his fucking head off. Which is in the film ends with him, with the Baroness holding up this boy's head. Which is, of course, it's just like, oh wow, that's gnarly. It sounds sick as shit, but like, of course, for especially a repressed person like Ellen, it's just like pure horror to be working on it frame by frame, film by film. Now, she doesn't, even though she's not the one who worked on the KKK film, she doesn't over reflect like on like, hey, like, why am I objecting to this more than the KKK film, right? Um, and speaking of which, there was a journalist who did a hit on them for doing the KKK film. It's someone we're led to believe is a somewhat influential commentator, woman about town, writer, and the woman is named Rachel Feldman.
She's so
Uh,
fucking cool.
she's so sick. And being a anti-Semite and also wanting money, Ellen's boss is like, "You're a Jew. Rachel Feldman's a Jew. Y'all should go get lunch. I've set up lunch for you at this Jewish restaurant. Go tell her that we're making this movie. Restoring this movie made by a Jewish person. I'm sure she'll take that really well."
Yeah,
And
yeah,
thus
it's
we
a
meet Rachel
Katz's
Feldman.
Deli. Like, I mean,
It's so
it's
sick.
it's so good.
And which is also how we find out that like Ellen has spent very little time in like Jewish parts of town and stuff like that. We get more of her being like, "Wow, I've never seen anything like this," Uh which and she was like, "I heard my brother during his bad phase would come here to buy pastrami." Like it's so funny. That was his rebellious phase. Uh and we meet Rachel Feldman, who is the opposite of really everything Ellen is, and is everything Ellen wants to be. Whereas Ellen is over thin and like afraid of food, Rachel enjoys herself. She eats whatever she wants. She's a very large woman, which of course, in Ellen's mind, that makes her like as big as a planet, because Ellen's mind is very warped by her perceptions of bodies and stuff like that. There are some descriptions of Rachel that, if taken out of context, would be like, "Damn, this book is like really going in on fat people." No, it isn't. This is Ellen's perspective. This is the way
Mhm.
Ellen views the world. And she's also very turned on by it, of
Oh
course.
yeah, yeah. No,
And
Rachel's unambiguously described as very pretty.
Rachel is very pretty. She's very attractive. She's very assertive. She's comfortable in her Jewishness. She's comfortable in the fact that she's a lesbian. And she is very comfortable in like just her skin in general, which makes the meeting between these two women deeply uncomfortable. But Rachel's like, "I'll write you a nice piece if you show me the film."
Hmm.
Um, and which leads to the two of them going and seeing the film and then being like, "Wow, this shit is magic for real though."
There's a couple of things. There's a couple of things though that I think are important, which is like something I really love is the way that this book insists on like the materiality of film. Film
Yeah,
is like a physical thing. But it's also this thing which is so incredibly fragile. Like so much of like as an art form, so much of cinema is just lost, completely lost, and we'll never see it, we'll never have it because it was made on film that's incredibly flammable, prone to degrading, or it's just been locked up in a climate controlled vault for the past 60 years by IP hogs, right? There's so few other art forms where that has happened, and but at the same time, cinema was also like, at least from its inception, seen as an inherently democratic and collaborative art form, right? Because this idea of like, oh, it's a film by Karla Bartok, it's not quite true, right? Because it's a film made by actors and camera operators, and like film is inherently something that is a collective activity.
right.
Yeah, you can make a film uh, by yourself on your phone, but again, that's a kind of democratizing means of technology, right? And it often isn't now. Now, film is often abstracted away from its the material conditions of its production, and its inherently shared democratic and collectivist mode of production. We think of film as this thing that you see on the screen, as something that's kind of like intangible, right? That's why it's linked to desire, because desire is always coded through the thing that you can't have, right? The thing that's just on the other side of the screen. But really, the screen is real, right? That's a surface that you can touch. Film is the stuff that you can run through your fingers.
Hmm.
And I think the book is so good at kind of like pointing out that this it's not a contradiction, but this kind of paradox of film makes it really powerful. I think you could read this entire book without necessarily going, "Oh yeah, it's supernatural." Like you
Mm,
could, right? Like I think the book's pretty unambiguous that there is magic, there is something supernatural. But actually, I think all of us who love movies have had an experience like that, right? Where you are kind of like in Fred Jameson has this great quote where he says that the visual inherently tends towards the pornographic because it ends in rapt fascination. And I'm like, all of us, if you think about it, there would be a movie that you saw for the first time where you didn't know how long it was the first time you saw it, right? Because you just had to experience it. And time kind of became sort of meaningless. So like, I think it's kind of fun to be like, what if it isn't a cursed film? What if it's just a film, and what if this is just what film really can do to us as a material object, as something that we encounter. Um, Yeah, I don't know what you both think.
No, yeah,
There's a
absolutely.
fun reading of that where she just the ending is her just doing Inglorious Bastards in real
Yeah, yeah,
life.
exactly, right?
Could be,
Exactly.
could be, but also, the question of whether that happens doesn't matter to me personally, because it's at the point where our protagonist finally can self-actualize, and necessarily
Mhm.
it's going to be perceived as radically different from everything else that up to this point we've been steeped in from this perspective.
And of course, there's a lot of path still to go on her actually actualizing and a lot of horror. For instance, we alluded to it earlier, but her boyfriend, that she would never call her boyfriend, comes over while she's sick, gets the door unlocked by the landlady, and he's like, I'm being sweet to you, whatever. I made you the worst eggs you've ever seen. And then he rapes her. It's horrifying. I mean, like
Mhm.
it's like it's comical in a way, like in the morning where she wakes up and he's like left a little smiley face note, like not really, but like darkly comical, like holy
Mhm.
shit, this dude. And then he's made a mess of her kitchen, like making her like again the coldest egg you've ever seen, the most
Mhm.
inedible shit imaginable. Like that's what this guy has done. He sees himself as a good guy. He sees
Yeah.
himself as quote unquote one of the good ones. He's always calling her, and like then like if she doesn't answer he's like calling her mom, and because her mom is a menace who wants grandkids even though she hates the grandkids she actually has, she's linking up with her with him. It's a mess, and that's contrasted against the time that she's spending with Rachel Feldman, where Rachel Feldman is, pretty rude to her because again she's a pretty rude person in turn. And Rachel's like, oh my god, like Rachel immediately susses her out, like you're
Mhm.
queer, you want to fuck me so bad. And the whole time Rachel's like, no, or and Ellen's like, no, and then inside her mind, she's like, I wonder what it'd be like to be her dog. Like multiple times. She's like, I want to be her dog so bad. It's like,
Mhm.
okay, well, you can do that, but you're gonna have to make some life changes first, our friend. Um, and in this process, we also run into her ex girlfriend, who has been referenced a few times, Freddie. Freddie, who is not a major character in the sense that we see Freddie a lot in this book, but it is a girl that Ellen dated in college. Freddie is a trans woman. Freddie is, we don't know her race, but she's probably not white because she refers to her
Mhm.
as white girl at one point.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and Freddie, has somewhat radical politics. We don't know all the specifics, and she was happy with Freddie. And also, she says her mom called her back to reality. She was and she chose to go to this conversion therapy instead of staying with her, and they've been separated for 15 years. And when she sees Freddie's like, yeah, you're that chick I had sex with for like 6 weeks one time. And Ellen's like, I've thought about you every day of my entire life.
Mhm. 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 Because this is a person who has embraced who she is and gone on and lived her life and not spent years and years and years buried um under all kinds of layers of repression and neurosis.
She
um
became a
yeah.
DP for Rodney Dangerfield. God damn it. Uh, who
Which is just a lovely, like, recurring joke that Rodney Dangerfield is in town and like the traffic is terrible. And I'm like, really? In New York, there's bad traffic. Like, what are the odds? Like,
Yeah, he like at the end he's just standing there and they smoke a cigarette together, and then he's like, "Don't make me say it," and she's like, "I won't," and then he says, "I don't get no respect," uh, which in the honor of Rodney Dangerfield, let me give it a shot. Let me give it a shot. I don't get no respect. They say I got to restore a film about a sex is negative. I say my wife is sex negative every night. Oh, I tell ya, I asked to be my princess's dog. She told me to go fetch the damn credit card. I tell ya, exploitation film. Yeah, my exploitation get filmed all the time. I don't get no respect. How's that? How are we doing?
It's like he's here
incredible.
with us.
Oh God.
Ah,
Um, where were we?
well, we
Her
were
hand's
Freddie.
hurting a lot. They go and
Mhm.
watch the movie together. She gets
Mhm.
fingered by a ghost.
Mhm.
Uh,
Who
or
hasn't?
maybe multiple ghosts. Rachel is like, yeah, this movie's definitely haunted, and then tells her some of the history. She learns more about the background that every single person involved died in the Holocaust or escaping Nazi Germany. And in fact, the film's director survived the concentration camps until the Allies liberated the concentration camps. And as happened in real life, kept some of the queer people locked up, despite like liberating the camps, quote unquote.
Mm-hmm.
And people did in real life actually die. There were American battalions, especially, that like kept some of the people with the pink triangles locked up. And so he lived to see quote unquote liberation, but still died under the new order, which is obviously Gretchen being very particular with that statement there.
Yeah, read this is not the first time or the last time I'll recommend this book. Read Eric Lichtblau's The Nazis Next Door for more on that. He
Hmm.
covers that in the first couple of chapters. No, I love how Gretchen Felker-Martin tempers because I'm reading this and my sort of a lot of Boss Baby vibes here comparison is Lee Mandela's The Woods All Black, right? Because in very similar ways, right, you're immersed in dread and in just a constant constant cloud of societal institutional bigotry and repression, and it culminates in such incredible catharsis, and that's the moment that I was waiting for, and that's the moment that I'm glad we got, right? But I love how Gretchen Felker-Martin really tempers our expectations here, because textually at several points she reminds us, look, like, not everybody gets this happy ending, right? There's a lot of suffering that you have to go to realize it, right? The way that she, from Ellen's perspective, depicts Freddie, right, as somebody who was just an aspect of like this former radicalization on Ellen's part, right, juxtaposed in the text with her yelling at her parents about Israel and South Africa, right? It's 1985 where the story is set, and we're writing this now in 2025. Gretchen Felker-Martin is, right? Not long after the book is set is when South African apartheid gets formally overthrown, right? Israeli apartheid from 1985 to today has only gotten worse and stronger, right?
Which Gretchen
And
actually acknowledges in the afterword of the book.
yes, she does, and I'm glad she does. And if your allegiance is to anti-imperialist, anti-racist struggle, right? Victory, that's how it is, right? Victory could be imminent, or it could be a few years off, or it could never ever happen in your lifetime, right? And yes, Shiloh, I agree. And not everybody is equal to that uncertainty. Ellen certainly doesn't have the humility at that time in her life to just shut up and take it when somebody calls her rich girl, criticize the words that she uses, right? It's for certain people in many ways it is much easier to sort of assimilate. And I think it's very deliberate in a book about a cultural artifact rescued from Nazi fire. I think it's very deliberate that Ellen tells herself, this work I do keeps me safe, right? Arbeit macht frei, work liberates. You are still in the prison regardless of how safe you think you are.
And it should be
Yeah.
noted too that her family has lived with this trauma in horrifying ways, because this sort of, as we get to the end, before the supernatural stuff really just explodes, we have this period with her family where she's in intense struggle with them. She cuts her hair. She cuts her hair to, look more like her actual self, which she knows her mother will hate. Her father's retirement party is coming up. She has multiple interactions with them, and in the process of so doing reflects on her family's own history, her grandfather, her uncles, her grandmother. She realizes, my grandmother was not buried with the rest of my family. What's the deal with that? The grandmother,
Mm.
the house she bought and like maintained for years, is the house my entire family lives in. It's where we're going to have the retirement party. Well, it is revealed that the grandmother was, despite being Jewish, an informant on other Jews in hopes to survive the Holocaust. And though she did eventually get sent to a camp, she got sent to a camp much later and very likely survived the Holocaust because she did that informing. And she spent the rest of her life doing two things. One, being sort of up to her own stuff, staying away from the Jewish community, which is probably a big part of why her family also avoids the Jewish community. And two, fundraising for Israel. Are the two things. And she's like, she knows her like grandmother. She's like, the few memories she has of her is her like watching the 6-Day War and being like, oh, that's all fake. And also, if it's not fake, it's good. And you
Yeah.
also have the other perspective, which is her uncle, who was in the IDF, who came back, lost a leg, and drank himself to death, and was like, we've spit on the graves of everyone who died in the Shoah. Is what this. So that's like her. And this book is not about Israel, but because she is an upper class Jewish family in New York in the 80s, that with conservative ties, it would make sense that that connection would exist. To like not acknowledge it would be one thing, and it's not about that, but it's like a living and present thing in this text.
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
that like is worth noting, and so is the the legacy of resistance, both queer and Jewish, against the Nazis, against the Holocaust, and also this character like meeting Rachel, who is very proud of her own Jewishness and is not worried about that. Uh, yeah, it threads the needle in a really impressive way. I was really surprised to learn that Gretchen's not Jewish herself, but I think she writes it extremely well, and she certainly spoke with a lot of people. And I know one of her, someone that she was raised with, like kind of her godmother was Jewish, so has a lot of like connections to that community.
Yeah, and this is what I mean like I said at the beginning of talking about like replacing a kind of moralistic cultural presentation with a political one.
Yeah,
We go actually, um like this. I think a really good focal point for this is Ellen's father, and like the relationship here between Jewishness and queerness that's focalized through him and like his
yeah,
experiences, um, and like this idea of like you things could have been different, and is it like the great problem of being a historical materialist, of being any kind of like leftist or radical, is to be like, can you live with history? Can you live with history as not just not it isn't this liberal teleological like point towards perfection, right? Isn't it's history is a crime scene. There's a great quote from the Cambridge Companion to American Horror where they say, if history is what hurts, horror is what bleeds. And so that quote, history is what hurts, again, it's from Frederick Jameson, who was probably the most important like American critic and cultural critic of like the last 50 years, in my opinion. History is what hurts, right? Those hurts are not just individual or personal; those are collective and generational, which means those hurts are not just like, oh, my personal social world has been impacted. It's like the political world is like out of kilter. As Eugene Debs would put it, the world is not right.
hmm
And it's like that is not simply a kind of like that's something that we phenomenologically, that's something we live through, that's something we have to reckon with. And it isn't about as it so often gets reduced to, it's not about apportioning blame or guilt, right? Capitalism deals in guilt really well. But right, like it's about reckoning with failures, right? The things that the great failure is, it didn't have to be like this, right? Like we see that in every kind of like major historical event we've all collectively lived through, where you go, it didn't, it could have been otherwise, right? And that's in some ways that's a really depressing thought. It's a really tragic thought, but also that's the only ground on which there's any kind of possibility of hope, right? And so I wrote about this in Capitalism: A Horror Story, of like Gretchen as a kind of utopian horror writer, where you go, actually, simply because things could have been different, it means that things might be different in the future
Mhm.
if there is kind of courage, if you can kind of grasp the opportunity that like living in a particular moment presents you with. It's so easy to be kind of crushed under the weight of history, but it's also the moment at which you kind of go, right, what's our capacity to do something with what we've been given? Like her relationship with her dad, Ellen's relationship with her father, I think is really interesting for all of those reasons. And reckoning with the fact that like you maybe didn't choose to be where you are, but that doesn't negate the fact that where you will be is something that is in some measure within your control.
Yeah, and he is someone that is, she says, is gay, is heavily implied to be gay. At the very least, he had this relationship with a man in the past, really a boy when he was young, and has had a relationship with at least one man at some point. Whether or not it was sexual, we don't know the details because he never opened up to her. In fact, it says, quote, her father looked at her, and in a flash, she understood that he was feeling everything she'd felt as she stared at her nephew at the end of the staircase, that whatever part of him might want to open up to her, might want to shake off its own dead, encrusted husk and taste the air again. It was too late. This was all he had left for her. You have to be careful. And
Yeah,
there's a and she, in her conversations with him, he lets things slip. He lets slip that they would have named her Benjamin had she been born a boy, and that there was an argument over that, and that the implication is, of course, that he had a relationship with a man named Benjamin that was super important to him at one point in his life. Uh, and at her day of her father's, quote unquote triumph, his retirement, and all his retirement buddies are there, all the family's there. They're in their nice house, nice pavilion. The only thing souring it is, of course, that his daughter got a stupid haircut, but he doesn't really care. His mom, and I suppose that his wife is like yelling at everybody to make everything perfect. He kills himself in front of everybody. He sets himself on fire. He something's up with him. He's been drinking a lot. He douses himself in lighter fluid and he sets himself on fire because he does not know what else to do. He gives this kind of rambling speech about how, like, oh, his life doesn't matter or whatever. And yeah, he burns himself, and then she's with her mom, and she's like, and her mom's like, has a moment of like very needed levity where but it's also, hits where her mom's like, 37 years and he never looked at another woman. And she goes, Mom, he was gay. And it's sad, but it's also very funny. But it's also like this moment of like her father is joining the ghosts of those behind, and she has moments where she sees that wave of ghosts, and that wave of ghosts is the crushing weight of history. But it is also like, we stand on these people and we're still here, and we now have agency and we can do something. And my father chose to burn himself. What if I choose to burn the oppressors? Then that's the capacity that she now has through her father, through her interactions with other people, and through the magic of film. Make of that what you will, whether that's a joke or whether that's very serious. But through the past generations, the work, the art, the study, the violence that they have gone through and inflicted in the name of justice and survival is what allows us and her to continue fighting today and self-actualize.
Because worth noting, the dad Ellen does. Ellen has these visions throughout the book as she's working on restoring the film of characters from the film, leaking into the real world. Weird shit happening. The Baroness, like the Chamberlain, like these demonic creatures from the movie, tempting her towards some ends. Do you want it? Is the refrain of, as we mentioned. And worth noting, the dad can see these things too. Like the
occasionally.
And I love how the what at first is grotesque and is outside the bounds of propriety is so definitely intertwined with the marginalized, with the dispossessed, with the oppressed, because that's what it is. We see there's a really effective scene that we talked about, the people who can see this stuff, who can see these specters, and there's also people who can't, or people who
won't, perhaps,
or who won't. Yes, that's a good word for it, because that's what happened to the queer Nazi that saved the like prince of this movie. He burned himself alive in his apartment. That's what happens to Ellen's shitty coworker. As it happens, he gets a glimpse beyond the veil and like digs out his own eyes with it's a very Event Horizon sort of fucking thing. And then jumps out of a window, right? Because the enormity of it is it's wholly inaccessible to him. But there's a really effective scene there on page like 147, 148, where they're at his funeral, and Ellen has a vision of not just not just the the past generations of people who died in the Holocaust in other places mourning their dead, but also the Baroness is there. Also the Chamberlain is there, right? And like it's a moment of it's a moment of the past talking back, right? It's a moment of, oh, like there is still, I can still be a part of the future that these people were trying to create, if not for everybody, even if just for their own self-preservation. Here I am carrying on in that same legacy, right? The past is talking back to me, and it's I could burn myself alive. I could also, as you say, Jacob, burn the oppressors.
Well, and she has this moment where she's like, tells her mom, "You're just like my grandmother, who was a Nazi informant, and I'm just like my grandmother, who was a Nazi informant." And that's also an important moment here of her being like, I am also doing this, right? Like, yes, I had this inflicted on me, but I also have continued to choose that. You
Mhm.
had shit inflicted on you, and you continued to choose to reproduce it. My grandmother had the fucking Nazi regime put on her, and she chose what she did with that. And so there is also this level of personal agency. It's not just and not in like a moralistic sense entirely, because it's also like these are the conditions that are imposed on us from the outside. Like, humans make their choices, but they do not make the choices. They don't choose the context in which they make the choices in like sort of the Marxist sense. But she still has that choice. And she remembers back to the only time in her life prior to this that she was happy. And it is when she was sleeping with Freddie on the beach in Rhode Island. And it said they'd been shooting a movie. Freddie had shotgunned her twice as the sun went down, and the weed had slowly permeated her, weighing down her limbs, pushing her thoughts deep into the cooling sand beneath her. I'm just some dyke, she'd thought, and the impossible freedom of it brought tears to her eyes. It's not important who I am or who I love or what I do. I'm mine. I'm just some dyke. She'd whispered in Freddie's ear, giggling as her girlfriend, half asleep, curled into her side. Tears streamed down Ellen's cheeks. And then it's not long after that her mother called and pulled her away from that. But she realizes that was the impulse. That was who she was. And it even has this moment where it's like she left the beauty of the unfamiliar for the cold comfort of the familiar.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think this is the thing that Ellen's father says of like, be careful, be careful. Like the flip side of that, the opposite of that is great quote from I Saw the TV Glow, right?
Mm.
There is still time. There is, it's like, isn't that the terrifying thing? And this isn't just on a personal level. Like, what if it isn't too late? Right? All of those moments where you were happy, those moments where like politics seemed like fixable, where one of the books I wrote was about Ernst Bloch and utopian philosophy, where utopia seemed like at hand, right? What if it isn't too late? That's isn't that a kind of like terrifying thing? Like this moment of like a genuinely frightening thing, and for some people they'll be go, yeah, it is, and in fact it's better to kind of like seal myself up in the box of the cold comfort of the closet of the family structure of capitalist realism and accept those things and let certain kind of parts of yourself kind of die and wither away. So right at the end of the piece that I wrote about this book, forgive me if this is really self-aggrandizing, please cut
No,
it out
go
if it
for
is. Is it okay if I just quote a little bit of what I wrote?
Please
do.
go ahead. Yeah, absolutely.
So the book understands that the mediation and policing of desire is unequivocally political. The appeal of fascist politics is in the libidinal thrill of sadism justified. Look at the right wing now, or the 80s throwbacks that populate the final pages of Black Flame. Are they happy? No. Happiness doesn't necessarily have anything to do with desire. Instead, all these people are thrilled. There is a libidinal economy of desire at work. This was Bloch's point in Heritage of Our Time. The appeal of fascism was a swindle of revolution. Inasmuch as it didn't promise you a better life, it made promises on the level of the imagination. It didn't speak to what you needed, it spoke to what you desired. There's a direct line between Leni Riefenstahl's propaganda films and the violent anti-Semitic heteropatriarchal queerphobia that structures Ellen's life world. Does desire set you free? As Deleuze and Guattari wrote in Anti-Oedipus, no society can tolerate a position of real desire without its structures of exploitation, servitude, and hierarchy being compromised. Desire is about the formation of a new kind of subjectivity. But to become a new kind of person necessarily means the creation of a new world, even if the old one must be burned down to ash to bring that into being.
Absolutely. Well, she chooses to do the dangerous thing. First by cutting her hair, and then by eating out her friend at a showing of Alien, or I believe it's Alien because it's John Hurt in space.
It is Alien. It is Alien. And it's
I like that she's like, I want to be John Hurt in Alien. And I'm
yes.
like, you do you, man. This is the worst person you could be in that movie.
But it's also like there's moments in the book, right, where she's like, yeah, I wish I was a man, right? And
Yeah.
like during the rape scene, right, it's easy to read it the way she might read it in the moment, right? I wish I was something bigger, something stronger. I associate masculinity with power and the ability to fight back, right? But like, yeah, here when she's watching Alien with Rachel, right, this is the most authentic expression of, oh yeah, like I want to look like that, just me qua me. I want to be more like John Hurt. I want to be more like this particular male figure.
Yes. And then she finishes out that by she does a showing of the film. And they're doing a showing. Basically, I read it at the top, but to be like mocking it so they can get their money from their conservative investors. Some of the conservative investors are concerned that they're like, why are you showing this, restoring this gay Jewish film? And they're like, don't worry, it's so we can show it's satanic. So they bring in this preacher man. He does the whole thing I read at top, and they're like, and without further ado, Mr. Strom Thurmond and the Heritage Society and all kinds of, or foundation and all kinds of other people. I could list people that are probably here, but the book does explicitly say Strom Thurmond is there, which I really appreciate. I like to imagine James Dobson is there as well, among others. Fred Stoker, whoever. It's a little early for Fred Stoker, but why not? We'll throw him in there. They're all there.
He hasn't broken free of the joggers yet.
He has not. They're all there, and she summons the fucking Baroness. And I should say she has already tested this power by giving her shitty boyfriend to the Baroness. Not to die, that'll be slightly later, but to be captured and have his limbs sewn together. And yeah, we just have this really gnarly, really fun, heavy metal playing scene of just monsters ripping apart actual monsters, including the Baroness fucking like decapitating and stomping on the corpse of this segregationist senator.
I love it. It goes so hard.
It goes crazy. It goes insane.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. It's the sickos yes meme, just in like on the page in front of you. But it's like it's in a way it's another kind of presentation of fantasy, right? This is the point at which we kind of go, that link between, so film is like a social technology of reproduction, right? It is inevitably put to social ends. You kind of go, you read it and you go, yeah, this is what we want. This is the world that we wish that we had. And so we're forced to reckon with the fact that it's the world that we don't have. We're forced to reckon with the fact that like increasingly these people have succeeded and have won the world that they want. But again, it's this moment of like, it doesn't have to be. It does, like, culture is always the site of contestation, right? What does the film mean? Is it this thing that can be decried as satanic, or is it this kind of liberatory underground piece of outsider art that is going to unlock? Like the kind of like complicated answer is maybe it's kind of both, and maybe like the meaning. And this is why I think it's such a great book to talk about here, is like, because it's about how do you contest that narrative? Like what is it? What is it that you want culture to mean is something that has to be decided, because there are incredibly powerful structural incentives baked into capitalism to, as we talked about right at the top, to hey, any chance we can throw a trans woman under the bus rather than make more money on, like, we're going to take that. And it's like, so this is why culture has to be the thing that you contest. It has to be the thing that you got kind of go, actually, Strom Thurmond getting stomped to death by the big lady who we all kind of love and want to be real, isn't just catharsis. It's like, no, that's a vision of a world that could be, right?
Yeah. And a world that indeed, do we necessarily want to live in a world where people get stomped to death? Maybe not. But like, sometimes needs must. We don't know. When we're so used to being subject to historical forces that are like impersonal and apathetic toward us at best, the fantasy of these forces rebounding on those who seem to be beneficiaries from it, or just immune to it, it's very real. And it's very cathartic to watch play out. Absolutely. There's a you know, it puts me a little bit in mind of Dorley Hall, right? The force femme basement fiction, right? What if there was a counterforce to the overwhelming institutional victory of patriarchy and compulsory heterosexuality, right? Okay, maybe according to the dream that Ellen has in the text, maybe Karl Bartok did tap into some demonic force from beyond human comprehension. Okay, maybe that's what was necessary to bring about patriarchy. Maybe there was no material force that could overthrow it, and if there was, you know, sucks that didn't come about before this person turned to it for survival.
And I think it's also worth noting, there's an important intersection there. Like, read about the Haitian Revolution, right? The way the Haitian Revolution originally kicked off was like people doing rituals in the woods. In fact, there are credible accounts that there were Haitian slave trans women involved in those literal rituals taking place in the wood. There's some great literature on it. We don't know these people's names for the most part, but they were, singing songs, and they were, and do I believe they were conjuring actual spirits? Well, no, but that doesn't matter because they did the damn thing. You know what I mean? And so also some of this language is part of that. It is tied up in that. And you get some just really cool shit too. I mean, like a dead horse, skeletal and rotten, and astride its back, a headless figure in a hussar's uniform, fur half cape flying, rusted saber drawn. It trampled Silas Graham. Ellen watched his skull implode beneath the piston of its hoof. As the horse wheeled around, she saw that there was a deformed man's face nestled between its buttocks, an evil grin stretching its lips, its features twisted by cauliflower growths and hairy cysts.
Orgasmic.
It laughs aloud.
Orgasmic.
Like, just doing the craziest shit you've ever seen. It rules. It's going nuts. And we have her at the end give herself to it. She gives herself over to it. And she then has this ritual that she conducts where she kills Jesse. He's already bound up. He's looking at her with hate, calling her a bitch. And yeah, she cuts his throat. And then it says, just to read the ending, a hand gripped Ellen's wrist, and then Rachel was with her, pulling her close and kissing her with ravenous heat, bite and suck, lick and nuzzle, hot and heavy as teenagers at a drive-in. Rachel's mouth slick with Jesse's hot blood, taste of iron and copper, her breast overflowing the palm of Ellen's hand. Her lips pressing a kiss to Ellen's forehead, a kiss that burned like a brand, that drew something out from deep within her, that boiled the air with ancient script, a name of fire written on her skin. Ellen screamed, but the pain was good. Dead things fell away from her. They burned into gray cinders. "Benjamin!" the crowd thundered. "Benjamin!" So much at once, the flame alive within her, the cries of the multitude ringing in her ears. "Benjamin!" Her father climbing into that long ago car with the bearded man, his friend, his lover, her mother expressionless, smoking on the porch. Ellen had a little bit of Jesse in her teeth. "What would you have named me if I had been a boy?" Ellen drew her last breath and Benjamin his first. He threw back his head and laughed, the black sun shining down on all of them, there on the hillside, damned and victorious, dead and eternal. And he held tight to Rachel's hand as the crowd surged around them. Lightning split the sky. "Benjamin!" He closed his eyes and smiled, blood running down his chin, and the thunder rolled over him, echoing his name, Benjamin.
Hot.
So fucking cool.
So sick. So
and
sick.
she lives out indeed the good ending of the film, right? Because as it transpires, as we found out, it transpires that Ilya Koffelberg, right, who plays the sort of the young boy, the ingenue kind of character, who goes to the Baroness's castle and whose mission is to deliver this message from his lord to the Baroness. That's what he spends the whole time doing. He's going through the castle, he's seeing all this weird shit and just like refusing to assimilate with it. Ilya, as we find out, is transmasc. Like in life, was this person who embraced this identity, but who ultimately was caught up in the Holocaust and destroyed. Now Ilya the character, right? What happens? you have this, he has this mission he's on, and he's single-mindedly devoted to it, and he doesn't complete it, right? He's beheaded by the Baroness. The last shot of the film is the Baroness like with his head, and that's the choice that Ellen and then Benjamin faces, right? That's the choice that we all face. You can die in the service of your lord, or you can kill him and live.
It rules.
Do you want it?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want it? And if not, why not? And if you do, what are you prepared to do? Because it might mean a kind of like, it might mean a nightmare, but at the end of it, you will be perhaps back in that place where you were happy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like this is the thing that I think is so this is the thing I think is so great about Gretchen's writing, right? Which is to take seriously that question of like, it might be worth it, right? To go through like, and the other point of like, it doesn't you don't have to live in this way. If you choose not to, it's not too late. There is still time. Like, are you but like, I think it requires a great deal of kind of like honesty and kind of like willingness to be like, to answer that question seriously of like, do you want it? Because our initial response is always, oh, I don't want anything. I don't want anything, because like that just opens you up for disappointment. But actually to go, actually, what do I want, and what am I willing to do in order to live in a world where that doesn't just have to be a desire, but can be kind of like, I can be remade. I can allow myself to be different. Yeah, I think it's very personally meaningful, but I also think that's like a deeply political question. And it's like, that's not just an individual thing, that's a collective thing too. Like if you take seriously this idea of like wanting to bring into being, that takes you away from just our own desires and into the collective politics of desire. Yeah, the ending's incredible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And to the last thing I wanted to quote from the book is in the afterwards, in the acknowledgments, there's a particular acknowledgement I wanted to read where she says, thanks especially to Helena Mantel, my grandmother, in fact, if not by blood, who risked her life to photograph Nazi atrocities in occupied Poland and came out of the death camps with enough love left in her heart to teach and cherish children for the rest of her days. Your memory lives on in us forever. Your belief in human dignity and the value of human life, your willingness to give of yourself to preserve these truths, to fight the fascists who would undermine and destroy them, endures in our hearts. And I think that's especially important that she used a camera in that action, right? She through film and through risk to herself, used those tools to spread the truth and to remind us of what happened, and to go in there and again at enormous risk to herself, let people know, and then to come out and have enough love in your heart to train up the next generation to continue the fight of that field of ghosts of the slain, so that not only did they not die in vain, but so that their work can be continued. And I find that to be so impactful. Well, did any of y'all have any final thoughts on the book before we wrap it up here?
10 out of 10. Incredible. Would I think I need to set it aside a bit before I reread it, but I will reread it because it is again, ends on a really cathartic note, but it is rough getting there.
Yeah, it's very short, or comparatively pretty short. In some ways I think it's got so much going on in it that in some ways I don't know if it's as focused and as kind of tight structurally as something like Manhunt, which is it's my favorite. But like as I described it on Blue Sky, it's a typical Gretchen Felker-Martin banger. It is rough getting there. It's maybe one I would not recommend to every single person, but if you are the right kind of person for this, this shit will hit hard for you, because it certainly did for me.
Well, whether or not you're the right kind of person to read this book, you are the right kind of person to go check out Horror Vanguard and the other stuff that Jon is up to. Jon, can you give your plugs one more time where people can find you?
Absolutely. You can listen to Horror Vanguard wherever, whatever artisanal distribution platform you get your podcasts from.
You get your pods and casts.
Yeah, absolutely. we're on a little interlude quest of doing transportation-based horror at the moment. Um, uh, you can find my writing at the Haunt .blog and the Haunt over on Substack, and I'm also on Blue Sky as the Liquid Guy as well. But thank you so much to both of you for having me on the show.
Thank you for
No, our
coming on.
pleasure.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, I know we have a like statistically improbable number of queer listeners among our fans, of course.
It's shocking, truly. If you look at the numbers, it's like something like 2,500% statistically unlikely non-binary representation in our listenership or something. Something like 31% of our listenership was non-binary last I checked. Like, what is the math there?
Yeah, exactly. And you know,
we love it, by the way, to be clear. Love it.
Yeah, no, we're trying to get those numbers up, and I am, but whether or not we succeed in that, just I'm forced to assume there are people who are not.
The way you said that, you sound so disappointed. That
But
there's
wherever
people
you-
that aren't non-binary listening, that there aren't non-trans people in the audience.
Well, you immerse yourself in certain communities. It's just like, oh wow, straight people exist. You sometimes have to be reminded about that.
Yeah,
but like,
shout out.
But wherever you are in your life, who are you really? Just ask yourself that. Sit with it. Whatever conclusion you come to, I promise you will be better for becoming something other, for even having entertained the idea that you are something other than what the world expects of you. Love yourself. I do.
Love yourself and call on dark magic as needed. Bye,
Yes.
everybody.
Hey,